I don't care about the child. My mother-in-law said about my 9-year-old daughter. My wife agreed. My husband is not so smart. He will sign what we need. 7 days later, their lawyer called me in a panic because what I signed was. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Warren Mercer had always believed that a good father was mostly a quiet man with a spreadsheet. Not a hero, not a fighter, just someone who paid the bills on time, checked the tire pressure before a long drive, and made sure there was money set aside for the day his daughter would need it. For 11 years of marriage, that belief had never been tested. He and Audrey lived in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The siding was beige. The mailbox leaned a little to the left because a delivery truck had clipped it 2 winters ago, and Warren kept meaning to reset the post. There was a small backyard with a patch of grass that never grew right under the maple tree, and a swing set that had rusted at the joints. Nothing about their life looked unusual. That was the point. They had bills. They had arguments about the thermostat and about whose turn it was to call the insurance company. They had good days when Audrey laughed at something stupid on television and bad days when neither of them spoke until the lights went out. And they had Hannah. Hannah was 9. She had Audrey's dark hair and Warren's habit of chewing her bottom lip when she was thinking hard about something. She kept her erasers in a plastic case, sorted by color. She left her shoes in the hallway every single day, and every single day Warren moved them, and neither of them ever mentioned it. She was the center of his world in a way he had never bothered to say out loud, because saying it felt like tempting something. The money had started with Warren's father. Warren still remembered the afternoon. The hospital room had smelled like disinfectant and cheap coffee. Audrey was asleep in the bed with the baby against her chest. His father had come in wearing the same brown jacket he wore to everything, funerals included, and he had stood at the window for a long time without saying anything. Then he had taken an envelope out of his inside pocket and set it on the tray table. $20,000, his father had said. Don't touch it. Warren had opened his mouth to argue. I mean it, the old man said. It's not for you. It's not for the house. It's for her. Whatever she turns out to be. His father had died 4 years later. That envelope was the last real conversation Warren ever had with him that meant anything. So the money stayed. Over the next 9 years, Warren and Audrey added to it whenever they could. A tax refund. A bonus. The $300 they got for selling the old sedan. It went in and it never came out. Warren checked the balance the way other men checked a lottery ticket, except he already knew the number, and knowing it was the pleasure. By the time Hannah turned 9, the account held just under $100,000. It was not technically college money. Warren had been careful about that distinction, even in his own head. It was an education fund, a future fund. If Hannah wanted a university, she could go. If she wanted to learn to weld or fix airplane engines or run a bakery, she could do that. If she wanted something none of them had thought of yet, they would figure it out. The important thing was that the money was hers. Not his. Not Audrey's. Not Audrey's mother's. Beatrice Vale had been a problem for a long time before anybody called it a problem. She was 64. She had lived alone since her husband died 6 years earlier, in a 2-story house on the east side with a wide front porch and a roof that needed work. She was not helpless. She drove. She shopped. She played cards on Thursdays and complained about the other women in the group. But she had spent 30 years making bad decisions with money and then acting surprised when they arrived. She had taken loans she did not understand. She had remodeled a kitchen she could not afford and then remodeled a bathroom because the kitchen made the bathroom look old. She had a way of describing debt like weather, something that happened to her that nobody could have predicted. And she had gotten very used to Audrey rescuing her. In the beginning, Warren helped too. He wrote the checks himself sometimes. $400 for a transmission, $600 for a dental crown. He did it without complaint because that was what family did, and because Audrey's face went soft with relief every time, and he liked being the reason for that. Then it stopped being occasional. A car repair in March, a medical bill in May, the gas company in July, a credit card in September that turned out to be a credit card she had opened without telling anyone. Every few months, another emergency. Always urgent. Always the last one. Warren started keeping a note on his phone. not to confront anyone with, just because the number in his head had started to feel wrong, and he wanted to know if he was being unfair. He was not. The note said $19,000 for $100 over 5 years. He brought it up on a Tuesday in the spring, standing at the kitchen sink with his sleeves pushed up. "We need boundaries," he said. Audrey did not look up from her laptop. "That's a therapy word. It's a real word. She's my mother, Warren. I know who she is." He rinsed a plate and set it in the rack. "I'm saying there has to be a number. Any number. Something that means no." Audrey closed the laptop with more force than she needed. "So you want me to tell her she's on her own? I want you to tell her the truth about what we can actually do." She left the room. That was how those conversations always ended. Not with a fight. With a door. Warren let it go. He always let it go. Then came the evening in October. It had rained hard that afternoon, and the air still held that wet, mineral smell that comes off warm pavement. Warren had come home late from work, hung his coat on the hook by the side door, and been halfway down the hall toward the kitchen when he heard Beatrice's voice. He stopped walking. He was not trying to hide. He simply stopped, the way a person does when they hear their own life being discussed by other people. The kitchen light was on. He could see a slice of it across the hallway floor. A chair creaked. A spoon touched the side of a mug. "You could just buy me a small house," Beatrice said. Audrey laughed. It was a real laugh, warm, dismissive. "Mom, I can't just buy you a house. You said you wanted to help." "I do." "Then help." Silence. Warren stood very still. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, Hannah's tablet was playing a cartoon at low volume. Then Audrey said, "We have money." Something in Warren's stomach pulled tight. He heard Beatrice's voice drop. It was the voice people used in restaurants when they leaned across the table. "What about Hannah's account?" There should have been an answer immediately. There should have been the sound of a chair scraping back, or a laugh, or the word no. There was a pause instead. 2 seconds. 3. Then Audrey said, "She won't need it for years." Warren walked into the kitchen. Both women froze. Audrey's hand was around a coffee mug. Beatrice was in the chair by the window, her purse still on her lap like she had never fully committed to sitting down. The overhead light was too bright. It made everything look like a photograph taken by accident. Warren looked at his wife. "What did you just say?" Audrey's chin came up. Defense arrived faster than guilt. "You weren't supposed to hear that." "I heard enough." Beatrice shook her head and gave a small, tired smile. "We were only talking." "No." Warren set his keys on the counter. He did it gently. "You were discussing my daughter's money." Audrey crossed her arms. "We could borrow it." "Who would pay it back?" "We would." "When?" "Nothing." The refrigerator hummed again and clicked off, and the kitchen got quieter than it had been all evening. Warren turned to Beatrice. She was still holding her purse. "You don't get Hannah's money." Beatrice sighed, the way a woman sighs at a child who has misunderstood something simple. "She has a long time before college." Warren looked at her for a moment. He did not raise his voice. He had learned a long time ago that volume was what people used when they had nothing else. "That's not your decision." Beatrice looked at her daughter, waiting. Audrey looked at the counter. Warren picked his keys back up, put them in his pocket, and went upstairs to say goodnight to Hannah. She was already half asleep, the tablet dark beside her, one arm hanging off the mattress. He tucked it back under the blanket and stood in the doorway longer than he needed to. Downstairs, the front door opened and closed. He did not go back down. Audrey apologized the next morning. She did it well. She had always done it well. Warren was standing at the counter waiting for the coffee maker to finish when she came down in her work clothes, hair still damp, and stopped in the middle of the kitchen instead of going to the cabinet. "I'm sorry," she said. He waited. "It came out wrong. She was crying before you got home. She thinks she's going to lose the house." Audrey pushed her hair back. "I said something stupid to make her stop crying. You said we have money. We do have money. That's not the same as saying we'd take Hannah's. Your mother said Hannah's name. You didn't correct her." Audrey's mouth tightened. "I was going to." "When?" "Warren." She stepped closer. Her eyes were tired and they looked honest. And that was the part he would think about later for a long time. "I would never touch that account. Never. That's your father's money. It's Hannah's money. Do you actually think I'd do that?" The coffee maker gurgled and went quiet. He wanted to believe her. That was the truth of it. Not that he did believe her, that he wanted to so badly that the wanting did the work belief should have done. So he made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. He gave her the benefit of the doubt. Okay, he said. Her shoulders dropped an inch. She came the rest of the way over and put her forehead against his collarbone, and he brought his hand up and rested it on the back of her neck, and for about 4 seconds it was 11 years ago, and nothing had happened. Okay, she said into his shirt. For the next few weeks, everything looked normal. Normal was a specific thing in that house. It was Audrey humming while she loaded the dishwasher. It was Hannah's science project on the dining table for 9 straight days. A foam ball solar system with Saturn glued on crooked. It was Warren driving her to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays and letting her pick the radio station, which meant the same 4 songs every trip. It was Beatrice not calling for 11 days, which Warren noticed and chose not to think about. Normal held until the second Saturday in November. Warren had a system. On the first and third Saturday of every month, he sat at the desk in the corner of the bedroom with a cup of coffee and went through every account. Household checking, savings, the 2 credit cards, the retirement accounts, Hannah's education fund last because it was the one that made him feel good and he liked to end on it. That Saturday the house was quiet. Audrey had taken Hannah to a birthday party at a trampoline place. Warren had the window open 2 inches and the November air came in cold and clean. He logged into the education account. The balance was correct. $98,206. He almost closed the tab. Then he scrolled down to the activity log, out of habit, the way you check a lock you already know is locked. There was a login on the 4th of November at 2:14 in the afternoon. Warren had not logged in on the 4th of November. He knew that with certainty because the 4th was a Tuesday, and Tuesdays he was on the plant floor from 10 to 6 with his phone in a locker. Below the login was a second line, a transfer request. Initiated. Then, beneath it, one more word. Canceled. Warren sat back in the chair. The cold air moved the edge of a paper on the desk. Outside, someone was running a leaf blower 2 houses down, and the sound rose and fell like weather. He called the bank. He waited 11 minutes for a person. When she came on, he gave his name, the last 4 digits, his mother's maiden name, and the answer to a security question he had set up 9 years ago about the street he grew up on. I'm looking at a login on November 4th, he said, and a transfer request that was canceled. I need to know who initiated it. There was typing on the other end. A long pause. Mr. Mercer, I can confirm there was an access on that date by an authorized party on the account, and that a transfer was initiated and did not complete. Authorized party. Yes, sir. There are 2 authorized parties on this account. Me and my wife. More typing. I'm not able to specify which authorized user performed the action. That's a privacy restriction on joint accounts. I'm sorry. Warren closed his eyes. Can you tell me the amount? I'm not able to release the transfer details, sir. I can tell you the transfer did not complete, and no funds left the account. Why didn't it complete? It appears it was reversed at the initiation stage. It may have been canceled by the user, or it may have failed verification. He thanked her. He meant it in a strange way. She had told him everything she was allowed to, and he could hear in her voice that she knew exactly what she was not saying. He hung up and sat there until the leaf blower stopped. He waited until Hannah was in bed. Audrey was on the couch with her feet under her, sorting through a stack of mail she had been ignoring for a week. The television was on with the volume low, some cooking competition, orange light moving across the wall. Warren sat down in the chair across from her. Someone logged into Hannah's account on the 4th, he said, and tried to move money. Audrey did not look up from the mail. She turned an envelope over, set it down, picked up another one. I don't know anything about that. That answer bothered him more than a lie would have. A lie has effort in it. A lie has a story attached. This was flatter than that. This was a woman reading her line off a card she had prepared days ago and had been carrying around waiting for the scene to start. You didn't ask what account, he said. She looked up then. What? I said someone tried to move money out of Hannah's account. You didn't ask how much. You didn't ask if it went through. You didn't ask if we should call the police. The mail stopped moving in her hands. I asked you a question, Audrey. You think I'm stealing from our daughter? Her voice climbed. That's what this is. You've decided. I asked you who tried to transfer the money. You're treating me like a criminal in my own house. Then tell me it wasn't you. There was a moment. Warren would remember its exact length. It was the length of one breath and part of another. She stood up. The mail slid off her lap and scattered across the cushion and onto the floor, and she did not pick it up. I'm not doing this, she said and walked out. He listened to her go up the stairs. He listened to the bedroom door close, not slammed, just closed firmly the way you close a door when you want to be heard being reasonable. Warren stayed in the chair. On the television, someone was being told their sauce had broken. He looked at the mail on the floor and thought about the number the bank woman had refused to give him, and about how a transfer gets canceled, and about the two ways that happens. Either the person changes their mind, or the machine stops them. He did not think Audrey had changed her mind. That was the first moment he knew, not suspected, not feared, but knew, that something in his house was seriously wrong, and that he was going to have to be the one to deal with it. They did not fight after that. That was worse. For 4 days, Warren and Audrey moved through the house like two people sharing a waiting room. She said good morning. He said it back. She asked if he wanted the chicken or the pasta. He said either. They talked about Hannah's parent-teacher conference and the leak under the guest bathroom sink, and whether the car needed an oil change. Underneath it, something was running. Warren could feel it the way you feel a truck idling in a driveway. On Thursday, Beatrice's car was parked out front when he got home. He sat in his own driveway for a full minute before turning off the engine. Inside, the two of them were at the dining table with a laptop open and a folded newspaper beside it. When Warren came in, Audrey shut the laptop. Not fast, casually, which was its own kind of fast. Hi, she said. Hi. Beatrice smiled at him with her whole face. Warren, you look tired. Long week. You work too hard. She patted the table twice, like she was inviting him to a chair in her own house. Sit down, I brought that bread you like. He did not sit down. I'm going to go change, he said, and went upstairs. He stood in the bedroom with his coat still on and listened to the murmur through the floor. He could not make out words, only the shape of the conversation, Beatrice going long, Audrey going short, Beatrice going long again. That was how it always worked between them. Beatrice talked until Audrey agreed. On Saturday, Hannah came into his room. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with a basket of laundry in front of him, matching socks because it was a thing to do with his hands. The window was gray. It had been threatening to snow all morning and never committing. Hannah stopped in the doorway. She had her arms crossed over her stomach, one sock on, one sock off, and she was chewing her bottom lip. Dad, Warren put down the laundry. What's wrong? Nothing. She came in and sat on the floor with her back against the dresser, which was where she always sat when it was not nothing. He waited. He had learned that with her. Adults filled silence. Kids filled it too if you gave them the room. Mom was talking to Grandma about my savings, she said. Something went cold down the back of Warren's arms. He kept his voice level. He kept his hands where they were. When? Thursday. When Grandma was here. She picked at the carpet. I was on the stairs. I wasn't spying. I know you weren't. I was getting my charger. Hannah, you're not in trouble. He slid off the bed and sat on the floor across from her, back against the closet door so they were level. What did you hear? She looked uncomfortable. She looked for a second older than 9, and he hated it. Grandma said I wouldn't understand because I'm only 9. Warren's jaw tightened. He made himself unclench it. What else? She said Mom promised to help her. Hannah pulled a thread out of the carpet and wound it around her finger. She said it kind of mean, like Mom forgot. Did they say how she was going to help? Hannah nodded. They said something about a house. The furnace kicked on under the floor. Warm air came up through the vent by the window and moved the curtain. Warren looked at his daughter. 9 years old, one sock, a thread wrapped around her finger until the tip of it went white, and made a choice. He could tell her she was right. He could say yes. That is exactly what is happening. Your grandmother wants a house and your mother is thinking about giving her your future to pay for it. It would be honest. It would also put a weight on a 9-year-old that she would carry into every room for the rest of her life. That's a grown-up thing, he said. It's not something you have to hold. But is it true? It's being handled. Hannah looked at him. She had a way of looking at him that was uncomfortably direct, and he suspected she had gotten it from him. That's not a no, she said. He almost laughed. It came out as a breath. No, he agreed. It isn't. He reached over and unwound the thread from her finger. The tip had gone red where the blood came back. Come here. She got up and came and sat against him, and he put an arm around her, and she was warm and bony and smelled like the strawberry shampoo Audrey bought in bulk. You don't need to worry about money, he said. That's my job. It has been since before you could walk. You worry about fractions. I'm good at fractions. Then you have nothing to worry about at all. She was quiet for a few seconds. Are you and Mom fighting because of me? Warren shut his eyes. That was the thing about children. They did not understand the mechanics of adult failure, so they filled the gap with themselves. Every time. It was the most reliable thing about them, and the most unfair. No, he said. You're quiet at dinner. Grown-ups get quiet. It's not about you. She tipped her head back to look up at him. Promise. He looked down at her. There were a lot of promises he could not make. He could not promise the marriage. He could not promise Christmas would look the way it had looked. He could not promise that in a year she would still have both parents in the same building. But he could promise this one, because this one was true. I promise, he said. None of this is because of you. She hugged him tighter, arms around his ribs, face against his shirt, and held on longer than she usually did. After she left, Warren sat on the floor for a while with the laundry basket still half sorted beside him. He thought about the account log, the login at 2:14, the canceled transfer. He thought about Beatrice saying, she wouldn't understand, she's only 9. He thought about the fact that his daughter had already understood enough to come find him. Then he stood up, and something in him settled. Not calmed, settled, the way concrete settles. He was done arguing with his wife. Arguments were for people trying to change each other's minds, and he no longer had any interest in changing Audrey's mind. He had spent 11 years being reasonable, and it had bought him a conversation in his own kitchen about spending his daughter's future on a house with a better kitchen. He was not going to be reasonable anymore. He was going to be exact. Downstairs, he could hear Audrey on the phone with her mother, laughing at something. Warren went to the desk in the corner of the bedroom, opened a new folder on his laptop, and named it with the date. Then he started saving screenshots. 2 weeks passed. They were quiet weeks, and Warren used them. He did not confront anyone. He did not search Audrey's phone. He simply started paying attention with a level of care he had never applied to his own life before. He noticed that Audrey had started taking her laptop into the bedroom in the evenings. He noticed that Beatrice's name stopped appearing in the call log on the shared tablet, which meant the calls had moved somewhere else. He noticed that Audrey had cleaned out the drawer in the kitchen where they kept old statements, and that she had done it on a Wednesday, which was not a day either of them cleaned anything. He noticed, and he wrote it down, and he said nothing. It was the first day of December when he found it. He was at the kitchen table with his laptop and a cold cup of coffee, doing the accounts on a Tuesday instead of a Saturday, because he had woken at 4 and never gotten back to sleep. Outside the window, it was still dark. The neighbor's porch light was on across the street, and there was frost on the windshields. He opened the household account. The transfer was 3 lines down. $10,000. Outgoing. Dated November 28th. Recipient, Bevale. Warren looked at it for a long time. He did not feel rage. That surprised him later. What he felt was a kind of terrible calm, the way a room goes quiet when a fuse blows and every appliance stops at once. He took a screenshot. He saved it to the folder. He renamed it with the date. Then he called his wife. She was at work. She picked up on the 4th ring with the sound of an office behind her, a printer running, someone laughing at a desk. Hey, I'm about to go into, what is this? A pause. The office sounds continued behind her and then got quieter, and he heard a door, and then nothing. What is what? $10,000. November 28th. To your mother. Silence. Warren waited. He was good at waiting. He had spent 11 years being the one who filled the gaps, and he was discovering that if you simply stopped, other people eventually could not stand it. Mom needed help, Audrey said. You took $10,000. I was going to tell you. When? I don't know. Her voice cracked slightly on the second word. Soon. I was working up to it. Working up to it. Warren looked at the frost on the window. Audrey, did you take it from Hannah's account? No. He closed his eyes. The relief that went through him was so physical it embarrassed him. His shoulders dropped. His hand loosened on the phone. For about 10 seconds, he was a man who had received good news. "Okay," he said. "Warren, I'll talk to you tonight." He hung up and sat there and let his heart come back down. Then, because he was not the man he had been in October anymore, he checked. He opened the other account, the one they had labeled 9 years ago in the bank's little text field as Hannah Future. It was separate from the education fund. It was smaller, 22,000 and change. It was the account they had built for the things that were not tuition: a first car, a laptop for high school, a deposit on an apartment someday, braces, a summer program, the flight to wherever she decided to go. The balance was $12,480. Warren sat very still. The $10,000 had come out of there, withdrawn on the 27th, deposited into household on the 27th, transferred to Beatrice on the 28th. 2 steps, 1 day apart, just enough to make the household account statement look like the money had come from household money. She had not lied to him. That was the thing that turned his stomach. She had answered exactly the question he asked. He had asked about the education account, and she had said no, and the word had been true. It was a technically honest answer, and she had constructed it in advance, and she had known he would hear what he wanted to hear. She had counted on it. Warren printed the statements. Both accounts, 3 months back on each. The printer in the corner of the living room ran for a long time in the dark house, and the sound of it was the loudest thing in the world. He was in the kitchen when she came home at 6. He had not turned on the overhead light, only the one over the stove. The 2 account statements were on the table, side by side, squared to the edge. Audrey stopped in the doorway with her coat half off. She looked at the table, then at him. "You checked," she said. "I always check." She finished taking off her coat, slowly, and folded it over the back of a chair instead of hanging it up. "Say it," she said. "You moved it out of Hannah's account into household, and then out of household to your mother, so that when I looked, it would look like it came from us." It did come from us. It came from a $22,000 account with her name in the title. He tapped the paper once. "You cut it in half. In 1 day." Audrey's face went red and stayed red. "Mom needed a place to live. You gave her $10,000 without telling me. She promised she'd pay it back. When? She'll figure it out." Warren looked at her. "You keep saying that. What do you want me to say?" Her voice went up. "That I made a mistake? Fine. I made a mistake. I panicked. She was sitting in my car in a parking lot crying about being 64 years old with nowhere to go, and I panicked. She has a house. She has a house that's falling apart, and she can't. She has a house." Warren stood up. He did it slowly. That she chose to borrow against twice. To put in a kitchen island she wanted. Audrey started crying then. It was not performance. He had been married to her for 11 years, and he could tell the difference. Her chin was shaking, and she was angry at herself for it, wiping at her face with the back of her wrist like she was trying to get rid of evidence. "I was trying to help my mother," she said, "and I was trying to protect our daughter." She looked up at him, and her expression changed. The grief went out of it, and something harder came in, something that had clearly been waiting a long time. "You always choose Hannah over me." Warren stood in his own kitchen and looked at the woman he had married and understood that she had just told him the truest thing she had said in 2 months. Not that he chose Hannah, that she experienced it as a competition. "She is 9 years old," he said. "You're supposed to choose her too." Audrey's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She picked up her coat and went upstairs, and this time she did slam the door, and the sound of it went through the whole house. Warren gathered the statements, squared them, and put them in the folder in the desk drawer. Then he went and made his daughter dinner. Warren went to see Beatrice on a Saturday morning without telling anyone. Her street was one of those older ones where the trees had been planted the same year and had all grown to the same height. Her house sat back from the road behind a strip of lawn that somebody else clearly mowed for her. The porch boards had been painted gray and were peeling in 2 places. The roof did need work. That part had been true. She opened the door in a cardigan with a coffee cup already in her hand. "Warren." She looked past him, checking for Audrey, for Hannah, for anyone else. "This is a surprise. Can I come in?" "Of course." She stepped back. "Take your shoes off. The carpet's new." The carpet was new. It was cream-colored and thick, and it ran through the front room and up the stairs. Warren looked at it for slightly too long. The kitchen had a stone island with a stool tucked under each end. There was a coffee machine on the counter that cost more than his. Somewhere in the back of the house, a television was on with the sound down. She sat him at the island and poured him coffee he had not asked for. "How's Hannah?" she said. "She's good. She's such a bright girl. She gets that from Audrey." Warren let that sit. "I want to ask you about the $10,000, he said. Beatrice's hand stopped for half a second on the handle of the pot. Then it kept moving, and she finished pouring, and she set the pot back on its base. "Audrey told you. The bank told me. Audrey told me after." "Well," she sat down across from him. "It's between me and my daughter, really. It came out of an account with my daughter's name on it." Beatrice's chin lifted a little. It was the same movement Audrey made. He had never noticed before that Audrey had learned it from somewhere. It came out of an account belonging to two adults who decided to help family. One adult decided. The refrigerator hummed. Beatrice turned her cup a quarter turn on the counter. "You want me to feel guilty?" she said. "No." Warren put his hands flat on the stone. "I want to know what it was for. That's all. I'm asking you a direct question, and I'd like a direct answer. What is the $10,000 for?" For a moment, he thought she would deflect again. Then something in her gave, not softness, exactly, something more like impatience with the effort of holding a story up. "A down payment," she said, "on the Kirkwood place. It's a ranch. 2 bedrooms. No stairs. You're not being evicted." "I never said I was." "Audrey said you were going to lose the house." Beatrice waved a hand. "Audrey exaggerates when she's upset." Warren sat back. There it was. Not a crisis. Not a woman about to be put on the street in December. A woman who was tired of stairs and a roof and a lawn, and who wanted something newer, and who had found a way to be given it. "So you're not in danger," he said. "You're uncomfortable. I am 64 years old." Her voice sharpened for the first time. "Do you know what it's like to clean a 2-story house alone? To go up and down those stairs with laundry? To lie awake in October listening to that roof? Then sell it. It won't sell for what it's worth. Not the way the market is now. So the plan was for us to cover the down payment on the new one, and you'd sell this one afterward and pay it back." "Yes." She said it like he had finally caught up. "That's exactly the plan. It's a bridge. It's not a gift. Nobody's stealing anything. And if this house takes a year to sell, it won't. If it does." "Warren, if it does," he said, "then for a year, my daughter's money is sitting in your driveway." Beatrice set her cup down hard enough that it rang against the stone. "You know what your problem is," she said. "You count. Somebody has to. You count everything. Every dollar anyone in this family has ever needed. You have it written down somewhere. Do you think Audrey doesn't know that? Do you think she doesn't feel it every time she picks up the phone to call me?" Warren stood. "You're right," he said. "I count. And the number is $19,400 over 5 years before this. Now it's $29,400. And you have never once in 5 years paid back $1 of it." Beatrice's face went white and then flushed. "Get out of my house," she said. "The $10,000 needs to come back. Get out." He got out. He drove home with the heater running and his hands steady on the wheel, and he did not feel triumphant. He felt the way you feel after you finally take a splinter out. Cleaner. Still sore. Audrey was waiting for him in the front room. "You went to see my mother. She called you fast. You humiliated her." I asked her a question. Warren shut the door behind him. She answered it. "She's not losing her house, Audrey. She wants a ranch on Kirkwood because she doesn't want to do stairs anymore." "That's not fair." "It's accurate. She's my mother. The $10,000 needs to come back." Audrey shook her head. "I can't ask her for it." "Then I'll ask her." "I already did." "You'll embarrass her. She took our money. She needed it." "No." Warren took off his coat and hung it on the hook and turned around. "She wanted a better house. Those aren't the same, and you know they aren't, because you're the one who told me she was about to be homeless, and she just told me she wasn't." Audrey stood in the middle of the room with her arms at her sides. And then she stopped pretending. He watched it happen. He watched something come loose behind her eyes, the effort of the last 2 months finally costing more than the truth. "Maybe Hannah doesn't need everything you've saved for her," she said. The house was very quiet. Upstairs, faintly, Hannah's tablet was playing something with music in it. Warren looked at his wife. What did you just say? You heard me. Audrey's voice was steady now, almost relieved. $100,000, Warren. For a 9-year-old. For a girl who might get a scholarship, or might not even go to college, or might get married at 22 and never touch it. Meanwhile, my mother is 64, and she's alone, and she's got nothing. And you're sitting on $100,000 for a person who doesn't exist yet. She exists. She's upstairs. You know what I mean? I know exactly what you mean. He said it quietly. You mean that money for someone in the future feels less real to you than a woman crying in a parking lot. And you're right that it feels that way. That's what makes it easy. She'll be fine, Audrey said. Hannah will be fine. She's going to be fine no matter what we do. Warren shook his head slowly. She'll be fine, because I'm going to make sure she is. He went upstairs. Hannah was on her bed with her tablet, headphones half on, and she looked up when he came in and gave him the smile she gave him about 40 times a day and had no idea was holding a grown man together. He stood in the doorway and looked at her for a second longer than normal. You okay, Dad? Yeah, he said. Homework done. Almost. Finish it. He went back downstairs, got his laptop, and started making a list. Warren did not hire anybody to follow his wife. He did not put software on her phone. He did not go through her purse. He did not build some elaborate plan with moving parts and a final act. He knew men who would have. He had heard the stories at work. The guy in shipping whose divorce turned into 2 years of surveillance and screaming. The supervisor who had spent $11,000 to prove something he already knew. Warren had watched those men come out the other side smaller than they went in. He did something simpler and much harder. He kept records. It became the shape of his evenings. Hannah went to bed at 8:30. By 9, Warren was at the desk in the corner of the bedroom with a lamp on and the door open, so he could hear the hallway. Bank statements. Every account, every month, going back 3 years, downloaded and saved as a file with the date in the name. Screenshots of the education account's activity log, including the login on November 4th and the canceled transfer beneath it. The 2-step movement of the $10,000, printed and highlighted, with a sticky note showing the sequence. Text messages. He did not need to break into anything. Audrey had been texting from the shared tablet for years, and the messages had been syncing to it the whole time because neither of them had ever bothered to change a setting neither of them understood. He read them for 2 hours the first night, and then went and stood in the bathroom with the light off for a while. Beatrice, on the 2nd of November. Sweetheart, the Kirkwood house won't sit forever. Someone came to look at it yesterday. Audrey, on the 4th. I tried. It didn't go through. There's a hold on transfers over a certain amount. I have to do it a different way. The 4th. 2:41 in the afternoon. 27 minutes after the login. Warren read that one 3 times and then took a photograph of the screen with his phone because a screenshot could be argued with and a photograph of a screen could not. Beatrice on the 12th. Any news? Beatrice on the 19th. I don't want to be a burden, but I need to tell them something. Audrey on the 26th. Give me 2 days. Beatrice on the 28th. You are the best daughter in the world. I'll pay every penny back. You know that. Audrey on the 28th. Don't say anything to Warren yet. Warren saved them all. He did not save them in anger. That was the strange part. Somewhere around the 2nd week, the anger had gone somewhere underneath and been replaced by something more useful. A flat, steady focus, the same one he used at work when a line went down and 40 people were standing around waiting for him to find the fault. Then he went to the bank. He did it in person, on a Thursday morning, using 2 hours of vacation time. He sat across a desk from a woman named Diane, who had a photograph of 2 dogs on her monitor and a stack of forms in a tray. He explained what he wanted. Not a scheme. Nothing hidden. He wanted Hannah's education fund moved into a custodial account structured properly under her name, with him as the single custodian. He wanted the joint access removed. He wanted alerts on every transaction, every login, every attempt sent to his phone and his email. Diane asked him a lot of questions, and he answered all of them truthfully. You understand, she said carefully, that if there's a divorce, the court is going to look at this account regardless of whose name is on it. I'm counting on it. She looked at him for a second. Then let's do it properly, she said, so nobody can say you did anything clever. It took 1 hour and 11 signatures. When it was done, the money had not moved anywhere it could disappear. It had moved somewhere it could be seen. Warren drove back to work and finished his shift. That night, he told Audrey. He told her at the kitchen table, with the light on, before dinner, in plain sentences. I moved Hannah's education fund into a custodial account this morning, he said. It's in her name. I'm the custodian. Your access is removed. Everything's documented at the branch. I can show you the paperwork right now if you want it. Audrey stared at him. You did that behind my back. I'm telling you the same day. After. Yes. He nodded. After. She stood up so fast the chair scraped. This is what you do. You don't yell. You don't fight. You just quietly go around me and then you inform me. Like I'm a vendor. You tried to move that money on November 4th. At 2:14. And at 2:41 you texted your mother that there was a hold on transfers over a certain amount and you'd have to do it a different way. He kept his voice completely level. That's not an accusation. That's a timestamp. Audrey's face changed color in stages. You read my messages. They're on the family tablet. They've been syncing there since Hannah was 5. She put a hand over her mouth for a second. That's a violation. You know that's a violation. Maybe, Warren said. Take me to court over it. I'll bring the whole folder. She sat back down. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The oven ticked as it heated. Outside, a car went past with a bad belt. You're trying to control me, Audrey said finally. Her voice had gone small. No, that's what this is. This is control. Warren looked at her across the table, at the woman he had loved, and at the wreckage of 11 years, and at the fact that she genuinely believed what she was saying. I'm protecting our daughter's money, he said. You had one job in this that was the same as mine, and you gave it to your mother. That's not control. That's the last thing standing. Audrey put her face in her hands. He let her sit there. He got up and checked the oven and turned it down. 3 days later, Warren called a family law attorney. The office was on the second floor of a brick building downtown, above a place that sold hearing aids. The attorney's name was Paul Ostrander, and he was maybe 60, with reading glasses pushed up on his head and a coffee ring on the desk that had clearly been there since the previous appointment. Warren had not gone there to file anything. I'm not sure I want a divorce, he said. I want to know what my rights are. As her father, Ostrander nodded like he heard that sentence 4 times a week. Show me what you've got. Warren put the folder on the desk. Ostrander opened it and started reading, and he did not talk for 11 minutes. He turned pages. He put his glasses down on his nose. He went back to a page he had already read, and then forward again. At one point, he stopped on the November 4th timestamps and looked up. You did this yourself? Yes. No, investigator. No. Huh. Ostrander went back to reading. When he finished, he closed the folder and put his hands on top of it. All right, he said. I'm going to tell you the most valuable thing I'll say today, and it isn't about the money. Warren waited. If you're considering separation, Ostrander said, stop mixing your finances. Today, not next month, and document everything from this point forward. Every dollar in, every dollar out, every conversation about money, dated in writing where you can get it. Why? Because right now you have a very good story and almost enough proof. He tapped the folder. 6 months from now, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll have proof and the story won't matter. Judges don't respond to betrayal, Mr. Mercer. Everyone in that building has heard about betrayal. They respond to a spreadsheet. Warren looked at the folder on the desk. That's it, he said. That's the advice? Ostrander smiled without much humor. That's the advice that wins. So Warren did it. Separate checking. Separate credit card. Every household expense split, documented, receipted. Every conversation about money followed within the hour by a text message summarizing it, sent to Audrey, so there would be a record with her name on it. She stopped responding to those texts after the second week. It did not matter. The record showed she had received them. Winter settled in properly after that. The house learned a new rhythm. Warren slept in the guest room. Audrey did not ask him to come back, and he did not offer. They kept it civil in front of Hannah with a discipline that surprised them both. Pancakes on Sunday, the school run, the Christmas tree that went up in the corner of the living room on the 12th of December and got decorated by all 3 of them with the radio on. Hannah was not fooled. Warren could see it in the way she watched them across a room, checking the way you check a stove you already turned off. But she had a good Christmas. He made sure of that. The final argument came on a Sunday morning in late January. It had snowed overnight for inches, and the light coming through the kitchen window was that flat white that makes everything indoors look older. Hannah was upstairs. Warren was at the counter with a knife and a cutting board, making sandwiches for later because they were supposed to go sledding at the park at noon. Audrey came in with her phone in her hand. He knew from the way she was holding it. "I found a house," she said. Warren kept cutting. "For Mom. On Delacourt. It's better than the Kirkwood one. It's got a garage. It's got—" She stopped. Started again. "She needs $35,000. Warren set the knife down. He turned around and leaned back against the counter and looked at her. "No. You don't even know where it's coming from." "I know exactly where you want it to come from." Her face went hard. "You don't know anything about— There are 2 accounts in this house with enough in them to cover $35,000, he said. "Mine, which is retirement, and Hannah's. And you didn't say retirement." Audrey threw the phone onto the table. It skidded and stopped against the salt shaker. "You are obsessed with money," she said. "No. You are. You have become a man who thinks about nothing else. Do you know what you sound like? Do you know what it's like to live with someone who has a folder?" Warren pointed toward the ceiling, toward the room where their daughter was. "I'm obsessed with making sure she doesn't grow up wondering why her parents spent her future on someone else's lifestyle. It's my mother's life, not her lifestyle. It's a garage, Audrey." His voice finally rose once and then came back down. "You just told me the reason this house is better than the last house is that it has a garage. Listen to yourself. We are talking about $35,000 of our daughter's money for a garage. She would pay it back. She's had 5 years to pay back $19,000, and she has paid back nothing. Not one payment. Not $1. Not once." He said it flatly, and when I said that to her face in her own kitchen, she didn't argue. She told me to get out. Audrey stood in the middle of the kitchen with the white light on her. "You're choosing money over your marriage," she said. Warren looked at her for a long moment. He thought about the hospital room, his father's brown jacket, and the envelope on the tray table. "It's not for you. It's for her. Whatever she turns out to be." He thought about a 9-year-old sitting on the floor with a thread wound around her finger, asking if it was her fault. "No," he said. "You chose your mother over our daughter. I'm just the only one who wrote it down." Audrey opened her mouth. Then she closed it. Something went out of her face. Not anger, and not sadness. Something more final than either. The look of a person who has just heard a sentence they cannot get around, and who understands in that second that the argument is not going to continue because there is nothing left on the other side of it. She picked up her phone off the table. "I'll call a lawyer tomorrow," she said. "Okay." "That's it?" "Okay." "Audrey." He picked the knife back up. "You've been calling one for 3 weeks. Your mother told me." The color left her face completely. They went sledding at noon, both of them. They stood at the top of the hill at Wexler Park in the cold with their hands in their pockets and watched Hannah go down 11 times on a plastic sled, and they clapped, and they said nice one when she got to the bottom, and once Audrey laughed at something without meaning to and then stopped herself. On the 9th run, Hannah wiped out at the bottom and lay flat on her back in the snow, arms out, laughing so hard she could not get up. Warren stood at the top of that hill and looked down at her, and thought, "This is the last thing we do as a family, and she will never know that, and that is the one mercy in all of it." They told her 3 weeks later, together, sitting on the couch. They had practiced. Audrey cried and Warren did not. Hannah asked 4 questions. Where would she sleep? Whether she was still going to the same school. Whether she could keep her fish. And whether it was because of the money. Warren answered the first 3. Then he said, "It's because your mother and I stopped agreeing about something important. It's not because of you, and it's not something you did, and it never will be. That's the whole truth I'm going to give you today. When you're older, if you want the rest, I'll tell you." Hannah looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded once and went and got her fish tank light and asked if it could go in the new room. The divorce took 11 months. Warren had expected a war. What he got instead was something slower and much more grinding, a process that took every private thing in his marriage, laid it on a table under a light, and asked both of them to explain it in writing. That process was where Audrey lost. Not in a courtroom. In a conference room on the 4th floor of a building downtown, with bad carpet and a water pitcher nobody drank from and 4 lawyers who all knew each other. Warren brought the folder. By then it was not a folder. It was 3 ring binders, tabbed, indexed, with a 1-page summary at the front that Ostrander had made him rewrite twice. The $10,000 transfer was documented. The 2-step movement out of Hannah, future in a household, and then to be, Vale, 1 day apart, with both statements side by side and the dates circled. The messages about the house were documented. Beatrice on the 2nd of November about the Kirkwood place. Audrey on the 4th about the hold on transfers. Beatrice on the 19th, needing to tell them something. Audrey on the 28th. Don't say anything to Warren yet. The attempted access to Hannah's education account was documented. The login at 2:14. The canceled transfer. The bank's own record, obtained properly through the process, confirming which authorized user had initiated it. That last one was the page Warren had waited a year to read. It said Audrey's name. He sat in that conference room and looked at it and did not feel the thing he had expected to feel. He had thought there would be some kind of release. There was not. There was just a name on a page, printed by a machine, confirming what he had known since a Saturday in November. Audrey did not look at the page at all. Her attorney read it, put it down, and asked for a short recess. They were gone 20 minutes. When they came back, something had changed in the room. Warren did not know exactly what had been said out there, but he could guess, because he had seen the same thing happen once at work the moment a man stops defending a position and starts trying to survive it. Her attorney did not raise the $10,000 again. Not once in 11 months. Ostrander explained it afterward, in the elevator, in about 2 sentences. He told her to stop defending the financial decisions, he said. Because the records are clean, and every time she explains one, she makes the next one worse. Is that good for me? It's better than good. The elevator opened. It means we're not arguing anymore. We're just dividing. Beatrice had her own problem. She had already spent the $10,000. Not on the down payment. That was the part that came out in the disclosure, and that Warren thought about for a long time afterward. $4,000 of it had gone to the Delacourt earnest money, which she lost when the financing failed. $2,200 had gone to a credit card. $1,500 had gone to the roof. The roof she had been telling everyone about for 2 years, patched at last, badly, by a company that did not answer the phone afterward. The rest had gone into the ordinary machinery of a life she could not afford. She could not return it. Not in a month, not in 6. And the house on Delacourt became impossible. The financing would not approve under the arrangement Audrey had imagined. It had never been going to. A 64-year-old woman with a fixed income, an existing mortgage she had borrowed against twice, and a down payment that came out of her daughter's household account with no documented source was not a file any lender was going to sign off on. Warren learned this months later and understood something that made him tired. The whole plan had never worked. Not from the first conversation in his kitchen in October. Beatrice had wanted a thing, and Audrey had wanted to be the daughter who provided it, and neither of them had checked whether the thing was possible before deciding it was worth their granddaughter's future. That was the part he could not get past. Not the greed. The carelessness. Beatrice sold her house in the spring. It went for less than she wanted, because it always does, and because a badly patched roof does not help. After the mortgage and the 2 loans against it, there was not enough left to buy anything. She moved into a 1-bedroom rental on the north side, over a laundromat, with a parking space and no stairs. She hated it. She told everybody. She told the neighbors, she told the women at cards, she told Audrey in phone calls that lasted an hour and a half. She said the walls were thin. She said the machines ran until 10. She said she had lived in a house for 31 years, and now she lived in a box. But it was hers, and she could afford it, and that was her responsibility, and nobody was coming to fix it. Audrey faced her own consequences, and they were quieter, and they lasted longer. She lost the marriage. That had been finished in January, whatever the paperwork said in November. She lost Warren's trust in a way that was permanent. And she seemed to understand that only near the end, when she stopped trying to explain herself and started simply signing things. She repaid the $10,000 through the settlement. Not in a check. In the division, the number came out of her side of the equity in the house, which meant it came out of the money she was going to use to start over, which meant she started over with less. Every dollar of it went back into the account it had come from, restored to 22,000 and change in Hannah's name. And she lost the ability to make financial decisions about their daughter alone. That was the part Ostrander had built the whole case toward, and Warren had not fully understood it until he read the final agreement. Both parents' written consent required for any withdrawal from either of Hannah's accounts. Automatic notification to both parties on any access. Annual accounting. It was 4 paragraphs. It was the most important thing in the document. There was no dramatic speech in a courtroom. Warren never got to stand up and say the thing he had rehearsed in the car at red lights for a year. There was no secret revenge. He never sent a single message designed to hurt her. He never told Beatrice what he thought of her at the end. He never had to. There was no criminal case. He had asked Ostrander about it once, early on in a bad week, and Ostrander had looked at him over his glasses and said, "You could try. It would take 2 years, cost you $30,000, put your daughter in a deposition, and probably fail. Or you can take the 4 paragraphs." Warren took the 4 paragraphs. What was left was just consequences. Real ones, arriving slowly, without music. A woman over a laundromat listening to the dryers run. A woman signing a settlement that took $10,000 off her fresh start. And they were painful. Warren knew that. He was not the kind of man who enjoyed it. He simply did not stop it, either. The new house was smaller. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A kitchen with cabinets from the 1980s that Warren repainted himself over 3 weekends in the fall. It was 11 minutes from Hannah's school instead of 6. The backyard was mostly gravel, but there was a window over the sink that got the afternoon sun, and the kitchen table fit under it, and that was where they ended up most evenings. That was where they were on a Tuesday in October, almost exactly 1 year after Warren had stood in a hallway and heard a woman ask about his daughter's account. Hannah was 10 now. She had gotten taller over the summer in that abrupt way kids do, and her handwriting had gotten worse, and she had opinions about music. She was doing math homework with a pencil she kept spinning between 2 fingers and dropping. Warren was across from her with the laptop open, paying the water bill. The education account was still there. $99,840. It had grown a little. It had never shrunk. Not by $1. Not on one day, in the entire worst year of his life. He looked at the number for a second longer than he needed to, then closed the tab. The pencil dropped again. Hannah picked it up. "Dad." "Yeah." She did not look up right away. She wrote something, erased it, blew the eraser dust off the page. "Are we okay now?" Warren closed the laptop. Outside the window, the sun was going down behind the house across the gravel, and the light coming in had turned the color of weak tea. A dog was barking somewhere 2 streets over. The radiator in the hall ticked as it came on for the first time that season. He thought about how to answer that honestly, because she would know if he did not. The truth was complicated. The truth was that he was tired in a way that had not gone away in a year. The truth was that he still woke at 4 sometimes. The truth was that there was a version of his life that had ended, and he had not entirely stopped mourning it, even though he would have made every single decision the same way again. But she had not asked whether he was okay. She had asked whether they were. "We're okay," he said. Hannah nodded. She seemed to accept it completely, the way children do when the answer matches what they have already observed. "Is Mom okay?" Warren took a moment with that one. He could have said a lot of things. Audrey lived in an apartment on the other side of town now. She had Hannah every other weekend and Wednesdays. She had gotten a second job for a while, and then given it up. She had been thinner in the spring than he liked, and better by August. She called Hannah every night at 7:30 and never missed, and Warren had come to respect that more than he wanted to. "She'll be okay," he said. "Is she sad?" "Sometimes." "So, am I. Sometimes." "That's allowed." Hannah spun the pencil. "Can I still see Grandma?" Warren nodded. He did not hesitate on it, and he was glad afterward that he had not. "If you want to." "Mom takes me sometimes." "I know. She has a really small apartment." "I know that too." Hannah went back to her homework. Warren got up and put the kettle on, more for something to do than because he wanted tea, and stood at the counter listening to it start. Behind him, quietly, without looking up, his daughter said, "I'm glad you didn't let them take my money." The kettle ticked on the burner. Warren turned around. She was still bent over the page. She had said it the way kids say the biggest things, sideways in the middle of something else so it can be picked up or left alone. He came back and sat down across from her. She was 10 years old. She had a pencil and a worksheet on fractions and a crooked ponytail. She should not have known any of it. She should have spent that year worrying about whether her friend was mad at her and whether there would be a dog someday. Instead, she had learned something no child should have to learn, that the people who tell you they love you can still, without ever meaning to become villains, make a series of selfish choices that cost you something real. He could not undo that. He had thought about it for a year, and there was no version where she came out of it not knowing. But there was a version where she knew the right thing. He reached across and closed her notebook, gently, with 2 fingers. "Hey," he said. She looked up. "Your money was never the important part." Hannah frowned. "What?" "The account. The 100,000. It's yours, and it's staying yours, and nobody's touching it." He shook his head slightly. "But that's not what I was protecting." She waited, confused. "Then what was?" Warren looked at his daughter. "You," he said. Hannah's face changed. It went through something quick, surprise, then understanding, then a kind of embarrassed pleasure. And she looked back down at the table and smiled at the closed notebook. "That's cheesy," she said. "It's true. It can be both." Warren laughed. It was the first real one in a while. The kettle started to whistle. He got up and took it off the burner, and the sound wound down, and outside the window the last of the light went off the gravel. That was enough for him. That had always been enough. People wanted Warren to describe them as monsters. That was the thing he noticed in the years afterward when the story came up, at work, at a barbecue, once with a woman he dated briefly and did not keep. Everyone wanted the version where his wife was cruel and his mother-in-law was a schemer, and he was the man who saw it coming. It was never that. Audrey admitted it eventually. Not in the settlement, and not to a lawyer. She said it in a parking lot outside Hannah's school, 2 years later, after a band concert, with the 2 of them standing by their separate cars in the cold. "I convinced myself I was helping her," she said. "That's the part one can't get past. I wasn't lying to you at the start. I was lying to me first, and then it was easy to tell you the same thing." Warren did not answer. "I thought I was the good daughter," she said. "It never occurred to me that I couldn't be that and a good mother at the same time. Nobody ever tells you those can be different jobs." She looked at him then, and he could see she was hoping for something. Absolution, maybe? Or just an argument, which would at least have been contact. He gave her neither. "Hannah did well tonight," he said. "She's been practicing." Audrey nodded slowly and got in her car. Beatrice admitted her part too, in her own way, which was sideways and never quite out loud. She told a cousin at a family funeral that she had leaned on Audrey harder than she should have, because she had always known Audrey could not stand to disappoint her. She said it like a personality trait she had been given rather than a thing she had used. Neither woman ever thought she was the villain. That was what made all of it so believable and so ordinary and so much worse than a crime would have been. They had simply made one selfish decision after another, each one small enough to justify, until there was no honest way to pretend the damage was not real. Warren never forgave Audrey. He wanted to be clear about that, in his own head, because people kept trying to hand him forgiveness like it was medicine he had refused to take. He did not forgive her. He did not think he was required to. She had looked at their daughter's future and seen a resource, and she had done it while telling him she never would. And there is a kind of thing that cannot be undone by time or apology or a good year of co-parenting. But he did not hate her either. Hate would have cost him something, and he had already paid enough. Hate would have leaked into how he talked about her in front of Hannah, and that was the one thing he refused to spend. So he did the harder thing. He simply stopped allowing her choices to control his daughter's life. Beatrice stayed in the apartment for 4 years and then moved to a small place near her sister in Dayton, which she could afford, and which she complained about less. She got the smaller home she should have gotten in the first place, on her own terms, paid for with her own money. Audrey rebuilt her finances slowly and without touching a dollar that belonged to Hannah, because the agreement made it impossible, and Warren suspected because by then she no longer wanted to. And Hannah kept every dollar, every single one. The $20,000 from a man in a brown jacket in a hospital room. The tax refunds. The $300 from the old sedan. The $10,000 that came back through a settlement. All of it, still sitting there, growing quietly, doing nothing but existing as proof that somebody had held the line. Years later, When she was old enough to understand it, Warren told her the truth. Not every ugly detail. He never showed her the binders. He never gave her the timestamps or the messages or the number he had carried in his head for 5 years. Just enough. The shape of it. She was 17, sitting on the counter in a different kitchen, swinging her heels against the cabinet the way she had done since she was small. She listened all the way through without interrupting, which surprised him. When he finished, she was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Dad, you really protected me." Warren smiled. "I was supposed to," he said. That was the whole thing, in the end. He had never gotten revenge. He had never wanted it, once he understood what it would have cost. He had not made his wife suffer, and he had not made his mother-in-law suffer. Their karma was not something he built. It was simply the bill, arriving on schedule, for choices they made with their eyes open. A small apartment over a laundromat, a settlement $10,000 lighter, and a lifetime of explaining to themselves why it had been reasonable. His victory was much smaller than that, and much quieter, and worth more than all of it. His daughter never had to pay for their mistakes.